Earlier this month, I was in Calgary to cover the first-degree murder trial of Emil and Rodica Radita, Romanian Canadians who are charged with first-degree murder in the starvation death of their teenage son, Alexandru. To make a very long story short, Alexandru was a diabetic, a type 1 diabetic, diagnosed when he was just a toddler, the family then living in British Columbia, turned up 2 years after his diagnosis, hours from death at Surrey Memorial Hospital. Turned out that the parents didn't accept really the diagnosis of diabetes. It's not clear why, but they are recalcitrant and stubborn people, bright, capable, and probably loving, who knows. But they didn't believe that this boy had diabetes. And the mother had stopped giving him, she admitted to this at a hearing later, she'd stopped giving him one of the kinds of insulin he's supposed to get. So anyway, the important thing to know is that was the dry run for what happened to Alexandru. He died, the parents, the family now living in Calgary, a decade after he turned up at this hospital in Surrey, hours from death. Then he'd been starved. He was the end stage of the disease that happens, the condition that happens when you're not getting enough insulin. He was starved. He had kwashiorkor, which is the third world form of starvation where children have distended bellies and stick limbs. Anyway, when he died in 2013, he was 15 years old and he weighed 37 pounds. He was surrounded by filth. He had festering necrotic sores all over his body. It was clear, as one doctor said, that he was a victim of abuse and neglect. So here we are, 2013. He dies. Parents are ultimately charged with first-degree murder, and this trial's going to resume in the fall. But way back, a decade before, the Children's Aid knew, the doctors at Children's Hospital knew. Most of these people did absolutely the right thing. They testified at this child protection hearing saying that Alexandru wasn't safe with his parents. It seemed pretty clear. The judge disagreed. Judge Gary Cohen of the BC Provincial Court ordered Alexandru returned to his parents. Some short time later, a couple of years later, they all fell off the radar. And it turned out during his several years in Alberta, he'd never gone to school, never seen a doctor. This is a kid with a serious diabetic problem. Anyway, the frustrating part is that it turns out all of this had been going on for a number of years. The parents arrived in 1985 in Canada. In 1991 in Ontario, they had a baby girl die. It appears that they may not have taken her to the hospital quickly enough. They claimed not to know there was health care. They had Children's Aid involvement in two Ontario cities. The cases were ongoing when they left. Then they show up in BC. Alexandru is diagnosed with diabetes. They don't really believe it. They end up in Alberta. And somehow, all these people didn't talk to each other. The various child welfare agencies in 3 provinces. And it is the most frustrating thing in the world, I think, to hear about these cases, because everyone knew, everyone who should have known, was told that he wasn't safe. Everyone knew these parents are odd, really stubborn people. The mother stopped giving Alexandru, certainly in 2003, and it appears when he died, one of the sorts of insulin he needed. And it was a completely preventable death, in other words, and it breaks my bloody heart.